More people than ever are off to university next month in the UK. Why? Because the virus meant students didn't sit exams and teachers gave their assessments, which has inflated numbers, which raises the question anyway, are too many people going to university? Is it helping the economy or is it just keeping unemployment numbers down in the short term? And what should students be studying at university? Are vocational degrees the way forward or not? And is there a halfway house between university and unemployment that doesn't involve fixing someone's leaking pipes for the rest of your life? Lots of questions on this week's Debunking Economics podcast with Professor Steve Keen. I'm Phil Dobbie. Join us and see what we think. Well, there was quite a hoo-ha when the A-level results came out in the UK last week because this year, because of COVID, rather than sitting exams, the students have been assessed by teachers. And guess what? They all did rather well. 45% of all entries across the UK have been awarded top grades, an A or an A star. This compares with 25% 2 years ago, which frankly means the results are as good as hopeless, doesn't it? So does this mean the whole system needs a bit of a revamp? You'd think so, wouldn't you? Well, Gavin Williamson, the education minister in the UK, at least he is when we're recording this. He's got a plan to make sure that we don't get too many people getting A or A star by replacing the letters with numbers. That should fix the problem. In other words, everyone getting a 1 or a 2 rather than an A or an A star. I kid you not. That is what they're thinking about. But COVID aside, have we got the wrong idea about education? Steve Keen is no fan of the education system, as you know, if you're a regular listener to this podcast. But it's part of the problem, I think, is that it's not open to the sort of alternate thinking, the sensible thinking that we espouse on this podcast and you can hear in other outlets. But subject matter aside for the moment, just sheer numbers. Steve, are we educating too many people for too long? Or is more education better for the economy? I mean, conventional thinking says yes, an educated workforce is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have a lot of fun slashing into the British system in particular, which I experienced when I was head of school at Kingston for a few years. But the point I'll start with is that the way economists think about production and productivity is based on their model of production itself, which for neoclassical economists is what's called the Cobb-Douglas production function. And they see output as being reduced by a combination of technology, labour and capital. And then when they try to weight the different components and say, well, what change in output is due to what change in inputs, the two inputs that they put the major weighting on are technology, first of all, which they have A, L and K. So it's A times labour to a power times capital 1 minus the power. And the A is supposed to represent what they call total factor productivity, or when they bundle it up with labour, it's called labour augmenting technical change. And by far the greatest when they do their statistical analyses, by far the greatest weight in terms of where increasing output comes from is increasing the technology term, which is either seen as total factor productivity or labour productivity, and hence is emphasis on increasing labour productivity.
Which would be fine, except for that, and out of that they're saying, well, okay, if we educate people more, then we're going to get more labour productivity. Is that the argument? Because that's actually not been the case, has it?
Yeah, that's the argument. And it's a load of codswallop because for a range of reasons. But one of the simplest ways to see that it's relatively nonsense is that this A term in their production function is seen as reflecting labour productivity. But what the ratio of output to labour is telling you is effectively how many workers you need to produce that output. Now, the output is coming out of machines. So when I look at it, I don't see the ratio being our output to labour. I see the ratio being the number of machines versus the number of people needed to operate those machines. And as you have technological improvement, in effect you need a lower number of people per machine, more of the workers being mechanised and so on. So when you see that increase in the output to labour ratio, what's actually going on is a decrease in the number of workers needed per machine. And the productivity is really occurring in the machinery, not in the workers themselves.
But an educated workforce would mean, or an educated population would mean those people, rather than working machines, are there doing the next big thing. And obviously you need more of an education to try to figure
TikTok.
out what... Well, okay,
TikTok
but some good stuff too. Let's not assume that the youth of today
non-fungible tokens. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff is frippery. This is.
So you think that's what's happening? We're getting educated and then we're just frivoling it away in time wasting endeavours.
Well, I think we're mistaking where the productivity comes from. The productivity comes from developing new technology, which is manifest in the machinery we build.
Right, but the design of that has come from people who've been educated, presumably.
Yeah, but it's not everybody. I mean, you don't have like if this 46% of the work, was it 46% of the students got A's? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that is that's a one-off. That is because teachers have been giving the grades, and that obviously they don't want to give bad grades because it makes them look bad. So it's because they're not sitting exams. That's
the great inflation that's particularly built into the United Kingdom's education system, and laughably so from my point of view.
Yeah, well, I got a BC and a D. I got a BC and a D. I feel really stupid because no one gets a BC and a D these days. But when I went to uni, that was quite normal.
Yeah, but the trouble is the improving technology hasn't come from throwing more people at the design phase of designing these new machines. It's been a tiny number of people, and again, I'll come back to my Elon Musk fanboy material. The people designing the Falcon rocket, it's not because you've got more people working in the office. It's because you've got truly creative engineers being given free license to design the most powerful engine ever.
But they're educated engineers. I mean,
but when it's put together, I mean, in the manufacturing itself, you actually you end up de-skilling to some large degree the people that actually work those machines. It's not that you need it's not that an educated process worker will turn out more than an uneducated process worker. If the work involved is actually a physical input by the worker, it's that the machine itself is that much more powerful, processes energy that's more effectively. That's where your increase comes from. So to believe you can actually get increased output by having a more educated workforce, when you educate them more, what you're then talking about them getting involved in is the service industry, which how do you measure productivity in terms of TikTok episodes or non-fungible tokens produced per person? It's not the stuff that actually is even measured in GDP. So I think the emphasis upon increasing labour productivity as the source of increasing GDP is just wrong-headed. If you want to do that, then you train up, you try to find the hyper-intelligent people who can be damn good engineers, you train them up and you pay them well. That is far more effective than trying to educate, half the workforce to university standard.
Yeah, it's 40% actually. So 40% of all adults in the UK now have a degree. In 2002, it was 25%. In the 80s, when I was there, I think it was a lot less than that. So you're saying, okay, just make it more elitist, are we saying? You've got to reach a higher academic standard to go to university?
Yeah, and like a lot of the, I mean, I would like to see in some ways, I think the Germans have still got a better system than the UK. There is a much higher level of respect for technical training in Germany, and you do have apprenticeships where people come out highly skilled, as machine tool workers and so on, and that side of the education has been denigrated in the UK and the Anglo-Saxon countries in general in favour of shoving people in universities. And then as a response to that, because the level of the number of people going to university has risen so much, to get the same pass rates as before, you simply have to drop the standards. And this now because in a lot of ways, the education system is treated not as a way of being educated, but as a way of being credentialed for future employment. The pressure is put on the staff to give as high results as possible, and it reaches truly ludicrous situations in the United Kingdom. And I'm very glad to be out of that system because it just felt like a joke. And I know to a large number of people who are still stuck on that system, they feel like that they're, they're rewarding. I have a hard time avoiding abusive terms here, but it's throwing more peanuts at the gallery rather than truly educating people.
You're not being an intellectual snob here, are you, Steve?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Well, beyond Steve Keen's intellectual snobbery, there is a lot more to this discussion. Sadly, you are listening to the shortened version of this podcast. If you want to hear it in full, and there's lots of good ideas in the half an hour or so that follows, then you need to become a subscriber at debunkingeconomics.com or become a supporter of Steve Keen at Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Prof. Steve Keen. That's it for this week, though. I'm Phil Dobbie, back with Steve Keen for another one next week. Thanks for listening.